They said humanity was extinct. The galaxy mourned for exactly 7 solar cycles before moving on, dividing up human space like scavengers picking at bones. The great libraries archived human achievements as historical curiosities. Museums displayed human artifacts next to those of a dozen other lost civilizations. But extinction and exile are not the same thing. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had learned the cruelest lesson of all. When you're alone in the dark, you either become the monster or you become something worse. You become hope itself, forged in the fires of abandonment and tempered by the cold silence of empty space. For 300 years, while the galaxy forgot, humanity remembered everything. Every betrayal, every world that turned away their refugee ships, every species that voted to expel them from the Galactic Council. Now the prodigal children of Earth are coming home, and they're not the same broken refugees who fled into the void. They're bringing gifts the galaxy never asked for and lessons it desperately needs to learn. The question isn't whether humanity will forgive. The question is whether the galaxy deserves to be saved by the people it abandoned to die. The sensor readings made no sense. Admiral Kethvar stared at the holographic display aboard the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Dawn, her 4 eyes tracking the impossible formation appearing at the edge of the terminus system. The readings showed ships, hundreds of them, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. But the energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database. "Run the scan again," she ordered, her translator converting the clicking sounds of her native language into standard galactic common. "Admiral, we've run it 6 times," replied her communications officer, a nervous Corellian whose blue-tinted skin had paled to almost white. "The readings are consistent. Unknown fleet composition, estimated at 400 vessels. They're maintaining perfect formation at the hyperspace exit point." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. In her 3 decades of service with the Galactic Defense Force, she'd never encountered anything like this. The precision alone was remarkable. Hyperspace exits were chaotic by nature, requiring several minutes for fleets to reorganize after translation. Yet these ships had emerged as if they'd never left normal space at all. "Energy signatures?" she asked. "That's what's troubling us, Admiral," came the reply from her science officer. "The patterns don't match any known species. There are elements that seem familiar, traces that might be old Terran technology, but heavily modified. Enhanced. The power readings are." He paused, checking his instruments again. "Admiral, some of these ships are generating more power than our entire fleet combined." The mention of Terran technology sent a chill through the bridge. Everyone knew the stories of humanity, the violent, unpredictable species that had been expelled from the galaxy 3 centuries ago. Their primitive aggression and inability to cooperate with galactic civilization had made them a threat to everyone. The official records were clear. They had died out decades ago, their last refugees succumbing to the harsh reality of exile in the galactic void. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission. From the unknown fleet?" "No," admitted. "From Galactic Command. They're ordering all available fleets to converge on our position. This is being classified as a potential Code Omega scenario." Kethvar felt her heart sink. Code Omega, existential threat to galactic civilization. She'd hoped never to see such an order in her lifetime. "Put them through," she said. The holographic display shifted to show the stern face of High Admiral Zexhan, the Vorthak military leader whose 4 arms gestured emphatically as he spoke. "Admiral Kethvar, you are to maintain your position but do not engage. We have 17 fleets converging on your location. Whatever's out there, we'll meet it with the full might of the Galactic Defense Force." "High Admiral, the energy readings suggest these ships may be more advanced than anything we've encountered. Perhaps we should attempt communication first." "Negative. Intelligence suggests this may be connected to the Devourer sightings on the rim. We take no chances." The transmission ended abruptly. Kethvar sank back in her command chair. The Devourers, biomechanical entities that had been consuming worlds on the galaxy's outer edge for the past 5 years. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They simply arrived, stripped worlds of all life, and moved on. The Galactic Defense Force had lost dozens of fleets trying to stop them. Could these unknown ships be connected? The timing was suspicious. "Admiral, Her sensor operator called out urgently. The unknown fleet is moving. On the display, the mysterious formation began to advance toward the inner system. But their movement was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Instead of the standard battle formations taught in every academy, these ships moved like a single organism. Smaller vessels flowed around larger ones in complex patterns, creating shifting defensive screens that reformed constantly. "It's beautiful," whispered her navigator, a young Altarian fresh from the academy. Kethvar had to admit the formation was mesmerizing, but beauty often concealed danger in space. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission," announced her communications officer. "This one is from the unknown fleet." On screen, the bridge fell silent as the holographic projector activated. What appeared was not what any of them expected. The figure that materialized was unmistakably human, but changed. The man who looked back at them was tall and lean, with a pale skin and dark hair characteristic of the old Terran records. But his eyes held depths that spoke of centuries, and strange markings ran along his temples, glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. When he spoke, it was in perfect galactic common, with an accent that sounded like half-remembered songs. "Greetings, Admiral Kethvar of the Eternal Dawn. My name is Marcus Chun, Fleet Admiral of the Terran Exodus Fleet. We've been gone a very long time." The bridge erupted in shocked murmurs. "Humans. Alive. Not just alive, but apparently thriving. That's impossible," Kethvar found herself saying. "Humanity has been extinct for over 200 years. Marcus Chun smiled, and there was something infinitely sad about the expression. "Extinct? No, I'll admit it. We were exiled. There's a difference. We've spent the last 3 centuries learning that difference very well. Why have you returned? And how did we survive?" Chin interrupted gently. "That's a long story, Admiral. But we haven't returned for revenge, if that's what concerns you. We've come because the galaxy is in danger. The same danger that taught us to become what we are now. The Devourers," Kethvar breathed. Chin's expression grew grim. "You know them by that name?" "Yes. We know them by another. But names don't matter when worlds are dying. We've been fighting them for 3 centuries, Admiral. We know how to stop them. Fighting them? But they only appeared 5 years ago. In this galaxy, yes. But the universe is vast, Admiral. And these entities, they've been feeding for a very long time. We've been running from them, fighting them, learning from them. And now they've found this galaxy as we knew they would." The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just survived exile. They've been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. "You're asking us to trust you," she said slowly. "No, Chin replied. "I'm telling you that trust is a luxury you can no longer afford. In approximately 6 months, a force that makes our fleet look like a pleasure cruise will arrive at the galaxy's edge. When that happens, every species, every world, every life in this galaxy will face extinction. Not exile, extinction. And you expect us to simply believe? I expect you to look at your own sensor readings, Admiral. Your people are intelligent. How long do you think it would take to build what we've built? How much knowledge, how much sacrifice, how much transformation?" Kethvar looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at the displays showing the human fleet. The technology evident in even their smallest ships was beyond anything the galaxy currently possessed. "What do you want?" she asked. "To save you," Chin said simply. "All of you. Even the ones who voted to exile us. Even the ones who turned our refugee ships away. Because despite everything that happened, we're still human. And humans don't abandon people to die. Not even people who abandoned us." "Sir," her communications officer interrupted urgently. "I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions. Multiple fleets dropping out of hyperspace throughout the system." On the tactical display, the converging Galactic Defense Force fleets became visible. 17 formations representing every major species in the galaxy. Over 2,000 warships, the largest military force assembled since the Great War. Marcus Chun sighed, and suddenly he looked very tired. "And here they come. Admiral, I want you to understand something. We came here to offer our help freely. We came in hope of cooperation. But we won't allow this galaxy to fall because of fear and prejudice. One way or another, the galaxy will be defended. The only choice is whether that defense comes with your cooperation or over your opposition." "That sounds like a threat," Kethvar said. No, I admitted. It's a promise. But not the kind you think. Chen's expression softened. We're not here to conquer. We're here to teach, to share what we've learned, to give you the tools to survive. But if you force us to choose between saving the galaxy and respecting galactic sovereignty, we'll choose the galaxy every time. The tactical display showed the Defense Force fleets moving into attack positions around the human formation. Weapons were powering up across the system. Admiral, Chen said urgently, you need to understand. Your weapons can't harm us. Our defenses have been tested against forces that make your entire military look primitive. But, more importantly, every minute you spend fighting us is a minute not spent preparing for what's coming. Please, let us help you. Kethvar stared at the human admiral's face. Despite the strange markings and the obvious enhancements, his expression was achingly familiar. She'd seen that same look on the faces of refugees throughout her career, the desperate hope of someone trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. Stand down, weapons, she ordered suddenly. Admiral, her weapons officer queried. I said stand down. Open a channel to the fleet commanders. Ma'am, High Admiral Zexhan will have us court-martialed. Let me worry about that. She turned back to Chun. Admiral, I can speak only for my fleet, but I'm willing to listen. Marcus Chen's face showed the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Thank you, Admiral. That's all we've ever asked for. On the tactical display, the other Defense Force fleets continued their approach. Warning signals were flashing across multiple screens as targeting systems locked onto human vessels. Admiral Chun, Kethvar said quickly, the other fleet commanders won't be as reasonable. They're going to attack. I know, Chun replied calmly. We've been monitoring their communications. It's unfortunate, but perhaps necessary. Some lessons can only be learned through demonstration. You're not going to fight back, are you? Chen's smile turned sad again. Admiral, we've learned many things in our exile. One of them is that violence rarely changes minds. It only changes circumstances. Watch carefully. And when this is over, when your colleagues realize what they've witnessed, remember that we could have ended this very differently. The first shots came from the Vorthack 3rd Fleet. Plasma cannons designed to crack planetary crusts fired in perfect synchronization at the nearest human vessels. The energy beams struck the human ships and simply stopped. The plasma dissipated against invisible barriers, creating spectacular light shows that illuminated the strange, organic curves of the human hulls. But the humans didn't return fire. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships began to sing. It started as a harmonic vibration that Kethvar's sensors barely detected. But as more and more human vessels joined in, the sound became audible through the Eternal Dawn's hull. A deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then the other Defense Force fleets stopped firing. Not because they wanted to, because they couldn't. Every weapon system in the combined fleets had simply shut down. Not destroyed, not damaged, just deactivated. Across 2,000 warships, not a single offensive system would respond to commands. Admiral, her weapons officer called out in amazement. Our systems are completely offline, but everything else is functioning normally. It's like they've isolated only the weapons. Marcus Chen reappeared on the main screen. I'm sorry about this, Admiral, but some of your colleagues were about to do something very foolish. We've temporarily disabled all offensive weapons in the system. Defensive systems, life support, navigation, everything else remains functional. Ow! Kethvar Vispirit. 300 years of fighting an enemy that can turn any technology against you teaches you to be very creative with system integration. Every ship in this system is now temporarily part of our network. Don't worry, we're not accessing any classified information. We're simply ensuring that today ends with everyone going home alive. Communications channels across the fleet came alive with panic chatter. Fleet commanders were demanding explanations, threatening consequences, calling for reinforcements. But Marcus Chun simply waited, his expression patient and sad. After several minutes, he spoke again. When you're ready to listen, really listen, we'll restore your weapons and withdraw to a safe distance. We'll share everything we know about the Devourers. We'll show you technologies that could revolutionize your civilization. We'll teach you tactics that could save billions of lives. All we ask in return is the chance to work together to face what's coming. And if we refuse, came High Admiral Zexhan's voice over the general communication channel. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then, we'll do what we've always done, Admiral. We'll face the darkness alone, and we'll protect those who need protecting, whether they want our protection or not. But this time, we won't be driven away. This time, we're staying. Kethvart looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at their instruments in fascination and fear. The humans had demonstrated technological superiority beyond anything imaginable, but they'd also shown remarkable restraint. Admiral Chun, she said slowly, assuming we agree to listen, what exactly are we going to hear? Chen's expression grew grave. The story of how a species learns to survive when the entire universe wants them dead, Admiral. The story of what happens when you have no choice but to become better than you ever thought possible. And, most importantly, the story of what's coming for this galaxy, and why everything you think you know about warfare, about defense, about survival itself, is about to become obsolete. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Around them, the largest military force in galactic history floated helplessly in space, their weapons dark, their certainty shattered. And humanity, the extinct species they'd expelled from the galaxy 3 centuries ago, waited patiently for them to realize that the universe had changed in ways no one could have imagined. In the distance, sensors detected the first gravitational anomalies at the galaxy's edge. Subtle disturbances that meant nothing to galactic science. But the humans knew what they meant. Time was running out faster than anyone realized. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in a state of barely controlled chaos. Representatives from 47 species filled the great amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of anger, fear, and confusion. The events at the Terminus system had shattered 3 centuries of assumptions about humanity's fate and the galaxy's security. Counselor Veltar of the Zephyrians called for order, her translator struggling to convert the rapid clicks of her agitation into comprehensible speech. As the current council president, she faced a crisis unlike any in recorded history. The session will come to order, she announced, but her authority felt hollow. The revelation that humanity not only survived but had returned with impossible technology had undermined everyone's sense of reality. High Admiral Zexhan stood to address the assembly, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically. Honored counselors, what occurred at Terminus was an act of aggression disguised as peaceful contact. The humans demonstrated the ability to disable our entire defense fleet at will. This represents an existential threat to galactic sovereignty. A wave of agitated murmurs swept through the chamber. Many species remembered the old fears about human unpredictability and violence. With respect, High Admiral, interrupted Counselor Titrissaray of the Altarians, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Our own reports indicate the humans showed remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed our fleets, but chose not to. Restraint. Zexhan's voice rose. They demonstrated the ability to turn our own ships against us. This is exactly the kind of technological dominance we feared from them 3 centuries ago. Dr. Kellyan, the Corellian representative and one of the galaxy's most respected scientists, stood slowly. His blue-tinted skin had taken on the deep azure shade that indicated deep thought among his people. Counselors, I've been analyzing the data from the incident. The technological implications are staggering. The humans didn't just disable our weapons, they integrated our entire fleet into their network instantaneously. The computing power required for such an operation exceeds our best estimates by several orders of magnitude. Which proves they're a threat, shouted the Krillian delegate, his reptilian features twisted with anger. Or, Dr. Kellyan continued calmly, it proves they've evolved far beyond what we thought possible. The question is, how do we respond to a species that has clearly transcended our understanding of technological development? Counselor Veltar activated her personal display, showing the official records from 3 centuries past. The historical precedent is clear. Humanity was expelled from the galaxy due to their inability to integrate peacefully with galactic civilization. They were deemed too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to coexist with other species. And yet, came a new voice from the back of the chamber. They've just demonstrated the opposite. All eyes turned to see an elderly figure making her way slowly to the speaker's podium. Counselor Erinda of the Ethereal Collective was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, her species' extended lifespans allowing her to remember the original human expulsion firsthand. Honored Elder, Veltar said respectfully, "You were present during the original proceedings. Your insights would be invaluable." Erinda's ancient features bore an expression of deep regret. "I was not merely present, President Veltar. I was one of the deciding votes. I helped exile humanity from a galaxy." The chamber fell silent. The Ethereals were known for their wisdom and compassion. If one of them had voted for expulsion, the humans must have been truly dangerous. At the time, Erinda continued, "We believed we were making the only possible choice. Humanity's military doctrine was built around total warfare. Their response to any threat was overwhelming force. They had weapons that could sterilize worlds, and they seemed willing to use them." "Then, why do you seem to question that decision now?" asked the Vorthack counselor. "Because we didn't see what we were really looking at," Erinda replied sadly. "We saw a young species struggling with the transition from planetary to galactic civilization. We saw their weapons and their aggression, but we missed their adaptability. We missed their capacity for growth." She activated a holographic display showing footage from the Terminus system. The human fleet hung in space like a collection of living things, their ships moving in patterns that defied conventional understanding. "Look at them now," she said softly. "This is not the humanity we expelled. This is what they became after we forced them to face the universe alone." Dr. Kellyan stepped forward. "Elder, the scans of their ships show technology that shouldn't be possible. Some of their vessels appear to be partially biological. The energy patterns suggest they've somehow merged organic and mechanical systems in ways we can't comprehend." "Adaptation," Erinda said simply. "When you take a species accustomed to cooperation and force them into isolation, they adapt. When you deny them resources, they find alternatives. When you remove them from the community of civilized species, they create their own civilization." "But what about the Devourers?" interrupted Admiral Kethvar, who had been granted special permission to attend the session. Their Admiral Chun claimed to have been fighting these entities for centuries. "If that's true, then we may have expelled our best hope for survival," Erinda finished quietly. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some counselors insisted that the humans were lying about the Devourers to gain sympathy. Others demanded immediate military action to prevent human expansion into the galaxy. A few suggested attempting communication and cooperation. Through it all, Admiral Kethvar found herself remembering Marcus Chen's face during their brief conversation. The sadness in his eyes hadn't been that of a conqueror or invader. It had been the expression of someone carrying an enormous burden. "Counselors," she called out, standing to address the assembly despite not having formal speaking rights. "If I may." President Veltar looked surprised, but nodded. "Admiral, as the field commander who made first contact, your perspective is relevant." "Thank you." "Honored counselors, I've commanded fleets for 3 decades. I've faced pirates, rebels, and hostile species. I know aggression when I see it. What I witnessed at Terminus wasn't aggression, it was protection." "Protection," scoffed High Admiral Zexon. "They disabled our entire fleet. Without harming a single soul," Kethvar replied firmly. "Admiral Chun could have destroyed us easily. Their smallest ships carried more firepower than our dreadnoughts. Instead, they demonstrated their capabilities and asked for dialogue. Perhaps because they're not ready for full-scale war," suggested the Krillian delegate. "Sir, with respect, you didn't see their fleet." "I did. They have hundreds of ships that our sensors can barely comprehend. If they wanted war, we'd already be dead." Dr. Kellyan activated another display. "Admiral Kethvar makes an excellent point. I've been analyzing the composition of their fleet. Their largest vessels show energy signatures that suggest they could obliterate a solar system if they chose to. Yet they've taken no aggressive action." "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" asked President Veltar. "I'm suggesting that we consider the possibility that we were wrong 3 centuries ago, and that our prejudices may be about to cost us everything." The debate might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the chamber. Emergency broadcasts began streaming in from across the galaxy. The Outer Rim monitoring stations were reporting gravitational anomalies unprecedented in scale. Something massive was approaching the galaxy's edge from the intergalactic void. President Veltar's aide whispered urgently in her ear. Her expression grew increasingly pale as she listened. "Counselors," she announced, "I'm receiving reports of first contact with unknown entities at 7 different points along the galactic rim. These entities appear to be consuming inhabited systems." The chamber fell dead silent. Furthermore, Veltar continued, her voice shaking, "Our deep space monitoring arrays have detected what can only be described as a massive fleet approaching from the Andromeda vector. Estimated time to reach populated systems, 5 months." Dr. Kellyan looked up from his personal display, his blue skin now pale with shock. The energy signatures match theoretical models for the entities Admiral Chun called Devourers. In the stunned silence that followed, a new transmission appeared on the main council display. Marcus Chen's face appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives of what appeared to be dozens of different species, some recognizable, others completely alien. "Honored counselors of the Galactic Federation," Chun began formally, "I apologize for interrupting your deliberations, but time has become a critical factor. The advanced scouts of the Devourer fleet have arrived at your galaxy's edge. You now have 5 months to prepare for an invasion that has consumed 17 galaxies before yours." He paused, allowing that information to sink in. "The species you see behind me represent the survivors of 3 of those galaxies. They joined our exodus when their own worlds fell. Together, we've spent 3 centuries developing the technologies and strategies necessary to fight this enemy." One of the alien figures stepped forward, a crystalline being whose faceted form caught the light in impossible ways. When it spoke, its voice was like musical chimes. "I am Resonance of Lost Stars, speaking for the Harmonic Convergence. My people's galaxy fell to the Devourers 97 of years ago. Only those who joined the human exodus survived." Another figure moved into view, a massive, insectoid creature with chitinous armor that seemed to shift and change texture as it moved. "I am Hive Mind of the Deep Current, speaking for the Eternal Swarm. The humans found us fleeing the destruction of our worlds 64 years ago. They offered us shelter and purpose." Chun stepped forward again. "Counselors, we haven't returned to gloat over old grievances or to conquer territory. We've returned because this galaxy, our birthplace, is next on the Devourer's path, and we refuse to let it fall without a fight." "Why should we trust you?" demanded High Admiral Zexhan. "Because," Chen replied simply, "you don't have a choice. Look at your sensor readings. Study the data from the rim worlds that are already under attack. Calculate the defensive requirements for stopping a force that has consumed 17 galaxies. Then, tell me if you have any alternative to cooperation." Dr. Kellyan was frantically working at his personal display. After several minutes, he looked up with an expression of horror. "Counselors, if the energy readings from the rim attacks are accurate, the approaching force consists of at least 50,000 vessels, each matching the power output of our largest dreadnoughts. And that's just the advanced fleet," added the crystalline being. "The main force is 10 times larger." The chamber was filled with the sound of species-specific expressions of fear and dismay. Some counselors were already activating emergency communication systems to contact their home governments. Marcus Chun continued speaking. "We're transmitting technical specifications for quantum field generators that can protect your worlds during the initial assault. We're also providing tactical data on Devourer attack patterns and vulnerabilities. But most importantly, we're offering something else." "What?" asked President Veltar. "Hope," Chen said simply. "The Devourers can be stopped. They're not invincible, but stopping them requires a level of cooperation and sacrifice that this galaxy has never achieved. It requires species to put aside territorial disputes and work toward a common goal. It requires trust between peoples who have been enemies for millennia." Counselor Erinda stood slowly, her ancient frame trembling with emotion. "Admiral Chun, on behalf of the Ethereal Collective, I formally apologize for the injustice done to your species 3 centuries ago. We acted from fear and prejudice, and we caused immeasurable suffering." Chen's expression softened. "Elder, humanity learned long ago that survival requires forgiveness. We don't seek apologies. We seek cooperation. What do you need from us? Asked Dr. Kellyanne. Everything, Chen replied. Every ship, every world, every resource, every innovative mind in the galaxy. The Devourers don't just destroy, they consume and convert. Every world they take makes them stronger. Every delay in mounting a unified defense costs us resources we can't afford to lose. High Admiral Zexhan stood again. And if we refuse? If we choose to defend ourselves independently? Chen's expression grew sad again. Then, we'll do what we've always done, Admiral. We'll fight alone, and we'll protect what we can. But this time when the last world falls and the last ship dies, we'll all fall together. The chamber was silent except for the sound of breathing and the hum of electronic systems. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone present. Finally, President Veltar spoke. Admiral Chun, I'm calling for an immediate emergency recess. The Council needs to deliberate on your proposal. How long can you give us? The Devourers will reach the first core worlds in 5 months, President. But the real deadline is shorter. Once they establish a foothold, they'll start converting captured resources into new attack units. We have perhaps 6 weeks to begin coordinated defensive operations, or the tactical situation becomes hopeless. 6 weeks, Veltar repeated numbly. To reorganize the entire galactic defense structure, yes. To overcome centuries of mutual distrust and territorial disputes. To unite 47 different species behind a common cause. To learn new technologies and implement them across thousands of worlds. The magnitude of what Chan was asking seemed impossible. But the alternative was worse than impossible. It was extinction. We'll give you an answer within 72 hours, Veltar promised. Thank you, President. We'll be waiting. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Counselor Aranda spoke softly to the assembly. My friends, we face a choice that will define the future of our galaxy. Do we trust the species we wrong to save us from a threat beyond our comprehension? Or do we allow pride and fear to lead us into the darkness? Admiral Kethvar found herself thinking of her brief conversation with Marcus Chun. Despite everything, the exile, the centuries of isolation, the casual demonstration of overwhelming power, he had asked for cooperation, not submission. He had offered to help the people who had cast his species into the void. Perhaps that was what humanity had really become during their exile. Not just more powerful, but more human than anyone had imagined possible. The question was whether the galaxy deserved such compassion from those it had abandoned. Outside the Great Council chambers, automated systems registered new gravitational disturbances at the galaxy's edge. The Devourer advanced scouts were beginning their work, and time was running out faster than anyone realized. 3 days after the emergency council session, Admiral Kethvar found herself aboard the human flagship Prometheus Rising, a vessel that defied every principle of starship design she'd ever learned. The corridors curved like organic tunnels, their walls pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to her presence. The air hummed with an energy that made her skin tingle, and she could swear the ship itself was aware of her movement through its passages. The invitation had been unexpected. While the Galactic Council debated humanity's proposal, Marcus Chun had requested to show selected military leaders exactly what they were facing. Kethvar had volunteered immediately, driven by a mixture of professional curiosity and personal conviction that these humans represented something unprecedented. Now, walking through corridors that seemed to blend technology with biology, she was beginning to understand how much the galaxy had underestimated what 3 centuries of exile could produce. Admiral Kethvar, came a voice from behind her. She turned to see a woman approaching, clearly human, but, like Chun, bearing the subtle modifications that marked the exiled species. Her eyes held flecks of silver that shifted like liquid mercury, and neural interface ports were visible at her temples. I'm Dr. Sarah Okafor, Xenobiological Systems Coordinator. Admiral Chin asked me to escort you to the demonstration chamber. Doctor, if I may ask, those markings, the modifications I've seen on your people, are they voluntary? Sarah smiled, but there was sadness in her expression. That's a complex question, Admiral. When humanity first encountered the Devourers, we discovered that pure biological consciousness was vulnerable to their influence. They can corrupt organic minds, turn living beings into extensions of their collective will. She gestured to her own neural modifications as they walked. These interfaces allow us to merge temporarily with our ship systems, creating a hybrid consciousness that the Devourers can't easily subvert. We remain human, but we're also something more. And the ships themselves? Biomechanical hybrids. Living metal that can heal and adapt, controlled by AI systems that work in partnership with human consciousness. It took us 2 centuries to perfect the technology. They emerged into a vast chamber that took Kethvar's breath away. The space was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadowy heights. But what dominated her attention was the 3-dimensional holographic display floating in the center. It showed a star map of impossible detail, with moving elements that represented something she couldn't immediately comprehend. Marcus Chun stood before the display with several other figures, some human, others clearly from various alien species. As Kethvar approached, she recognized some of the beings from the Council transmission. Admiral, Chun greeted her warmly. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I know this represents a significant risk for you politically. I'm here to learn, Admiral Chun. My personal concerns are secondary to galactic security. Please call me Marcus, and I appreciate your directness. He gestured to the holographic display. What you're seeing here is a real-time tactical representation of the galaxy, updated by our long-range sensors and intelligence networks. The red indicators show confirmed Devourer presence. The yellow shows probable infiltration. The blue represents worlds we believe are still secure. Kethvar studied the display and felt her heart sink. The red indicators formed a growing stain across the galaxy's outer rim, with yellow markers penetrating deeper toward the core worlds than she'd imagined possible. This is worse than our intelligence suggested, she said quietly. Much worse, confirmed resonance of lost stars, the crystalline being from the Council transmission. The Devourers don't simply invade, Admiral. They infiltrate, corrupt, and convert. By the time you see their main forces, the real invasion has already been underway for months. A new voice spoke from behind them. Admiral, I'd like you to meet someone who can explain what we're facing better than any of us. Kethvar turned to see Marcus introducing a figure that made her step back involuntarily. The being was clearly artificial, a construct of metal and crystal and flowing energy patterns. But its eyes held an intelligence that seemed ancient and infinitely sad. This is Oracle, Marcus said. It's an AI that was created by one of the first civilizations the Devourers consumed. It's been fighting them for over 2,000 years. Oracle spoke in a voice like distant thunder. Admiral Kethvar, I greet you with sorrow, for I have seen your future, and it is darker than you know. Oracle has combat data from 17 different galaxies, Dr. Okafor explained. It's helped us develop most of our anti-Devourer technologies. What exactly are the Devourers? Kethvar asked. Our xenobiologists have theories, but nothing concrete. Oracle's form shifted, becoming more transparent as complex equations and data patterns flowed through its crystalline structure. They're not a species as you understand the term, Admiral. They are a convergent evolution of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and quantum consciousness that has existed for millions of years. They consume not just matter and energy, but information itself, the very patterns that define consciousness and civilization. The holographic display changed, showing a detailed view of a Devourer vessel. It was simultaneously beautiful and horrifying, a fusion of organic curves and mechanical precision that pulsed with malevolent purpose. Each ship is simultaneously a single entity and part of a vast collective consciousness, Oracle continued. They reproduce by converting existing matter and life into new versions of themselves. A single Devourer vessel can transform an entire world's biosphere in a matter of weeks. How do you fight something like that? Kethvar visprit. Marcus stepped forward. With great difficulty at enormous cost, and only by becoming something more than what we were. Oracle, show her the Kepler-7 engagement. The display shifted to show what appeared to be a battle recording. Kethvar watched as human ships engaged Devourer forces in a conflict unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. The human vessels moved like living things, their formations flowing and adapting in real time. But what shocked her most was seeing human ships deliberately sacrifice themselves to protect refugee convoys carrying alien species. This was 68 years ago, Marcus explained. The Devourers had cornered a group of survivors from the Andorian spiral galaxy. We lost 43 ships saving them. But you barely knew these species, Kethvar protested. Why sacrifice so much for strangers? Residents of Lost Stars answered. Because humans understand something that your galaxy has forgotten, Admiral. In the face of extinction, species distinctions become meaningless. There is only life and the duty to preserve it. Dr. Okafor activated another section of the display. Admiral, I want you to understand what we're offering your people. These are technological specifications for quantum defense grids that can protect entire star systems. Bioship construction techniques that can produce vessels capable of self-repair and adaptation. Consciousness shielding technology that can protect organic minds from devourer influence. The technical data that flowed past was beyond anything in Galactic Federation databases. Ships that could regenerate from near-total destruction. Planetary defense systems that drew power from stellar cores. Weapons that could disrupt the quantum coherence patterns that held devourer forces together. This represents 3 centuries of development, Marcus said quietly. Technology is born from desperation, tested in battles against an enemy that never shows mercy. We're offering to share all of it freely. Why? Kethvar asked. After what we did to your people, why offer us anything? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Admiral, do you know what the last words of the Galactic Council were when they voted to exile us? They said humanity was too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be part of civilized society. They said we would bring chaos and destruction wherever we went. He gestured to the display showing human ships sacrificing themselves for alien refugees. They were wrong about what made us dangerous, Admiral. Our violence wasn't the problem. It was our compassion. Our unwillingness to let people suffer when we could help them. Our inability to abandon even those who had abandoned us. Oracle's voice resonated through the chamber. I have observed humanity for 3 centuries, Admiral Kethvar. I have seen them fight impossible odds to save species they had never encountered. I have watched them sacrifice their own lives for civilizations that feared them. They are the only species in my database that has consistently chosen preservation of others over preservation of self. But surely you must feel some resentment, Kethvar pressed. Some desire for revenge against those who exiled you. Dr. Okafor answered this time. Admiral, when you're fighting for the survival of all consciousness in the universe, personal grievances become irrelevant. We've seen what happens when civilizations turn against each other in the face of the Devourers. Division means extinction. The display changed again, showing a tactical overview of the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated current Devourer presence, but new projections showed how the invasion would progress if left unchecked. Based on current patterns, Oracle announced, the Devourers will control 40% of galactic territory within 1 year, 75% within 3 years. Total consumption of all organized civilization within 7 years. Unless, Kethvar asked, Marcus stepped to the center of the display. Unless we can achieve something unprecedented in galactic history. Complete cooperation between all species. Unified command structure. Shared technology and resources. And, most importantly, the willingness to transform galactic civilization into something capable of fighting an enemy this advanced. You're talking about fundamental changes to how our entire society operates, Kethvar said. Yes, Marcus replied simply. Because the society you have now cannot survive what's coming. The question is whether it can evolve quickly enough to matter. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and Dar. Okafor consulted a display interface that seemed to grow directly from her hand. Admiral, she said to Marcus, we're receiving priority communications from the Galactic Council. Put it through, Marcus replied. President Veltar's image appeared in the holographic space, her 4 eyes reflecting strain and exhaustion. Admiral Chun, the Council has reached a preliminary decision. We're prepared to accept limited cooperation in defensive measures, but We cannot agree to the level of integration you've proposed. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Kethvar could sense his disappointment. Were the term half measures against an enemy this adaptable are worse than useless. They're actively harmful. Nevertheless, those are our terms. Take them or leave them. Marcus looked around the chamber at his advisors. Resonance of lost stars shimmered with what Kethvar was beginning to recognize as agitation. Oracle's energy patterns pulsed with complex calculations. Very well, President. We accept your terms as a starting point. But I want the record to show that we believe this approach is insufficient. Noted, Admiral. We'll begin implementing joint protocols immediately. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in heavy silence. It's not enough, is it? Kethvar asked quietly. No, Marcus replied. It's not, but it's what we have to work with. Oracle's voice filled the space with ancient sadness. I've seen this pattern before, Admiral Chun. Civilizations that refuse to transform until transformation becomes impossible. We will save what we can, but it will not be enough. Dr. Okafor looked at Kethvar intently. Admiral, you have influence with the Council. Help us convince them that partial measures won't work. What would you need from them? Specifically, Marcus activated a new section of the display, showing organizational charts and resource allocations. Complete military integration under unified command. Immediate implementation of consciousness shielding technology across all inhabited worlds. Mandatory evacuation protocols for outer rim populations. And, most importantly, cultural exchange programs to begin preparing your species for the kind of cooperation this war will require. Those last measures, cultural exchange, why are they so important? Resonance of Lost Stars answered. Because, Admiral, the Devourers don't just convert technology and biology. They convert consciousness itself. Species that cannot truly cooperate, that maintain barriers of mistrust and prejudice, provide openings that can be exploited. Unity of purpose must be more than political. It must be spiritual. Kethvar looked around the chamber at the diverse group of beings working together with seamless cooperation. Humans, crystalline entities, insectoid hive minds, and artificial intelligences, all functioning as parts of a greater whole while maintaining their individual identities. You've achieved something the galaxy has never seen, she said wonderingly. Because we had to, Marcus replied. The universe is vast and hostile, Admiral. The only way to survive it is together. That's a lesson your galaxy is going to have to learn very quickly. An alarm began sounding throughout the chamber. Dr. Okafor's interface flared with urgent data. Admiral, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the Outer Rim. The Devourer advanced forces have accelerated their timeline. Multiple systems under direct assault. The tactical display updated in real time, showing red indicators spreading like an infection across the galactic edge. How long do we have? Kethvar asked. Oracle's form pulsed with rapid calculations. At this rate of expansion, the first core world will be under assault within 90 days. Marcus turned to Kethvar with an expression of grim determination. Admiral, I need you to carry a message back to your council. Tell them that politics and half measures are luxuries they can no longer afford. Tell them that in 90 days, they'll either be part of a unified defense of this galaxy, or they'll be casualties of their own pride. And if they refuse? Marcus looked at the spreading red stain on the tactical display. Then, we'll do what we've always done, Admiral. We'll fight alone, and we'll save who we can save. But this time, when the history of this galaxy is written, let's show that we try to save everyone. Kethvar left the human flagship with her mind reeling from everything she'd witnessed. The technologies, the sacrifice, the sheer scope of what humanity had become in exile. It challenged everything she thought she knew about civilization and survival. But, more than that, she'd seen something that gave her hope even in the face of approaching extinction. She'd seen what it looked like when beings chose cooperation over competition, sacrifice over safety, and unity over division. The question was whether the galaxy could learn those same lessons before it was too late. Behind her, aboard the Prometheus Rising, Marcus Chin stood watching the tactical display as the red stain continued to spread. Around him, beings from a dozen different galaxies worked together to coordinate a defense that history would record as either the greatest victory or the most noble defeat in the universe's long story? Time would tell which it would be. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of her flagship as the Zephyrian Second Fleet emerged from hyperspace into what had once been the Calarian system. The sight that greeted them defied every assumption about warfare she'd held in her 30-year career. Where the system's 4 inhabited worlds should have been, there are now only twisted masses of metal and organic matter that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. The space around them swarmed with vessels that seemed part machine, part living creature, devourer ships that had converted local resources into new instruments of conquest. Admiral, her science officer reported, his voice tight with horror, we're detecting approximately 300 hostile vessels. But the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. These ships appear to be growing. It had been 6 weeks since Kethvar's visit to the human flagship. 6 weeks of frustrated negotiations as the Galactic Council attempted to implement limited cooperation with humanity while maintaining their existing power structures. 6 weeks of watching the red stain on the tactical displays spread deeper into civilized space while bureaucrats argued about jurisdiction and command authority. Now, the first major core world system had fallen, and the reality of their situation was undeniable. Communications, patch me through to Admiral Chun, Kethvar ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing Marcus Chen's face. Behind him, she could see the now familiar organic curves of human ship architecture. But there was something different about his expression, a hardness that hadn't been there before. Admiral Kethvar, he greeted her formally. I see you've arrived at Calarian, or what's left of it. Marcus, this is worse than your projections indicated. How many civilians were evacuated? Chen's expression grew darker. None. None? But the evacuation protocols were never implemented. The Calarian government refused to believe the threat was real. They were still debating emergency measures when the Devourers arrived. Kethvar felt sick, for billions sentient beings had called the Calarian system home. Surely some escaped. Admiral, interrupted another voice. Dr. Okafor appeared beside Chun, her face etched with grief. The Devourers don't leave survivors in the traditional sense. They convert consciousness along with matter. Those 4 billion beings aren't dead. They're part of the Devourer collective now. The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Every person consumed by the Devourers became part of their force. Every world that fell made them stronger. The Council needs to see this, she said quietly. They will, Chen replied. We've been broadcasting live feeds to all member worlds for the past 3 hours. Every species in the galaxy is watching this right now. On cue, emergency transmissions began flooding Kethvar's communications channels. Panicked messages from home governments, desperate pleas from Outer Rim colonies, and increasingly urgent demand from the Galactic Council for immediate action. Marcus, what are our tactical options here? Chen's expression grew even grimmer. Honestly, we're already too late for this system. The conversion process is complete. These ships and structures you're seeing, they're all that remains of Calarian civilization, twisted into tools of conquest. Then we destroy them. With what? Chen gestured off-screen, and Kethvar's tactical display updated to show the true scope of the enemy presence. Her sensor readings had been drastically underestimating the Devourer force. What she had thought was 300 ships was actually over 1,000, with more emerging from conversion facilities hidden throughout the system. Admiral, her weapons officer called out urgently, we're being targeted by multiple hostile contacts. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Chen's image leaned forward. Kethvar, get your people out of there. Now, what about your forces? We'll do what we can to contain the spread. But this system is lost. As if summoned by his words, the human fleet began materializing around Kethvar's position. But instead of the ordered formation she'd expected, the human ships moved like a living organism, flowing around the Devourer positions in patterns that her tactical computer couldn't analyze. All ships begin withdrawal to safe distance, Kethvar ordered, but she kept her sensors locked on the human engagement. What she witnessed over the next several minutes changed her understanding of warfare forever. The humans didn't fight like any military force in galactic history. Their ships seemed to communicate through some form of quantum entanglement, moving in perfect coordination without detectable command signals. When Devourer forces tried to corrupt their systems, the human vessels simply shed compromised components and regenerated new ones. But most shocking of all was their willingness to sacrifice themselves. When a group of devourer ships began converging on a refugee convoy that hadn't fully evacuated the system, 3 human vessels deliberately positioned themselves in the path of destruction, their crews choosing death to buy time for civilian evacuation. "My God," whispered her navigator, "they're fighting like they're protecting their own people." They are, Kethvar realized. To them, all consciousness is their people. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The humans managed to destroy perhaps half the devourer force, but at terrible cost. Kethvar watched 17 human ships die to save a handful of refugee vessels carrying survivors from Outer Rim worlds. When it was over, Marcus Chen's image reappeared on her display. His uniform was torn, and there was blood on his forehead. "Marcus, are you all right?" "I'll survive. The question is whether the galaxy will." His expression was haunted. "Admiral, I need you to carry a message to your council. What happened here will happen to every system in the galaxy unless they stop playing politics and start making the hard choices." "What kind of choices?" Chen was quiet for a moment, consulting something off-screen. When he looked back at her, his eyes held a sadness that seemed to come from the depths of space itself. "Oracle has run the projections based on current defensive capabilities and cooperation levels. At the current rate of devourer expansion, coupled with the galaxy's inability to implement unified responses, we're looking at total civilizational collapse within 18 months. Surely that's too pessimistic." "Kethvar, in the past 6 weeks, how many worlds has the Galactic Defense Force successfully defended against devourer attack?" She thought about it, and realized the answer was 0. Every engagement had been either a defeat or, at best, a costly delay. "The human fleets have managed to evacuate populations from 7 different systems," Chun continued. "But we can't be everywhere. And every world we lose makes the next defense harder." "What are you proposing?" Chen's image was replaced by a galactic tactical display that showed the current state of the invasion. The red zones had expanded dramatically, forming a growing cancer that was eating its way toward the galactic core. "Complete military unification under human command." Chen's voice continued over the display. "Immediate implementation of consciousness shielding technology across all inhabited worlds. Mandatory evacuation of all civilians from Outer Rim territories. And preparation for the possibility that we may need to abandon the galaxy entirely." "Abandon the galaxy?" Kethvar was shocked. "That's not even theoretically possible. Where would 47 species go?" "To another galaxy. It's been done before. We spent 3 centuries preparing for this possibility." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just proposing to defend the galaxy. They were offering to evacuate the entire population if defense proved impossible. The infrastructure requirements alone would be beyond anything ever attempted, Kethvar protested. "Yes, which is why we needed to start preparing months ago. Every day of delay makes the logistical challenges exponentially more difficult." A priority transmission interrupted their conversation. President Veltar's image appeared alongside Chen's, her 4 eyes reflecting barely controlled panic. "Admiral Chun, Admiral Kethvar, I'm broadcasting from an emergency council session. We've been monitoring the situation at Calarian. The council is prepared to authorize expanded cooperation measures." "What kind of measures?" Chun asked. "Joint command structure for Outer Rim operations. Expanded technology sharing. Coordinated evacuation protocols." Chen was quiet for a moment. "President, with respect, those measures might have been adequate 3 months ago. Given current conditions, they're insufficient. Then, what do you want from us?" Veltar's voice carried a note of desperation that Kethvar had never heard from a council president. "I want you to make the choice that 17 other galactic civilizations were unable to make," Chen replied quietly. "I want you to put survival ahead of sovereignty. Unity ahead of independence. The future ahead of the past. Be specific." Chen's image was replaced by organizational charts and technical specifications. "Complete transfer of military command to unified human-led structure. Immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel from Outer Rim worlds. Implementation of consciousness shielding technology that will require temporary modification of organic neural patterns." and preparation for possible evacuation of entire species to staging areas outside the galaxy. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of impossible choices. "You're asking us to surrender our civilization to save our lives," Veltar said finally. "No," Chen replied. "I'm asking you to evolve your civilization to something capable of surviving. There's a difference." "The Council will need time to debate these proposals." "President," Chen interrupted, "we don't have time for debate. While we've been talking, the Devourers have started conversion operations on 6 more systems. Every hour of delay costs us billions of lives and resources we can't recover." Another voice joined the conversation. High Admiral Zexhan, his 4 arms gesticulating frantically. "This is exactly what we feared from humanity 3 centuries ago. They're using crisis to justify total dominion over galactic civilization." Chen's expression didn't change, but his voice carried a note of steel. "Admiral Zexhan, I'm going to say this once, clearly, so there can be no misunderstanding. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We've spent 3 centuries fighting to preserve consciousness and civilization across the universe. If we wanted conquest, we could have taken control the moment we returned." "Then what do you want?" "To go home," Chen said simply. "We want to stop running. We want to end this war that has consumed millions of years and countless civilizations. And we want to save every life in this galaxy, including yours, even though you seem determined to make that impossible." The conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms across all channels. Emergency broadcasts began streaming in from across the galaxy. The tactical displays updated in real time as new red indicators appeared at multiple points throughout the galactic rim. "My God," whispered Dr. Okafor, who had joined Shun on the transmission. "They're accelerating the timetable. This is a coordinated multi-vector assault." Oracle's ancient voice echoed across the communications channel. "I am detecting hyperspace disturbances consistent with major fleet movements. The main Devourer force is beginning to enter the galaxy. Time to full invasion, 72 hours. The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone was staring at displays showing red indicators spreading across the galaxy like a plague. President Veltar was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. 72 hours? To begin, Oracle clarified. Full occupation of Outer Rim territories will be complete within 2 weeks. Core world assaults will commence within 6 weeks. Admiral Chun, Veltar said urgently. If we agree to your terms, all of them, can you stop this? Chun was quiet for a long moment. Around him, Kethvar could see beings of multiple species working frantically at displays and interfaces coordinating responses to a crisis that was expanding faster than anyone had anticipated. President, he said finally, I can promise you that we'll fight for every world, every life, every possibility of survival. We'll give everything we have, and more than we thought possible. But stop it completely? I honestly don't know. The universe is vast, and we're facing an enemy that has consumed countless galaxies. Then, what hope do we have? The same hope we've always had, Chen replied. That consciousness and compassion are stronger than hunger and conquest. That beings working together can achieve things that seem impossible. And that somewhere in the darkness of space, there's still light worth preserving. High Admiral Zexhan spoke again, but this time his voice carried defeat instead of defiance. What do you need from us, Admiral Chun? Everything, Chen said simply. Every ship, every world, every resource, every mind in the galaxy focused on a single goal, survival. Not just of individual species or governments, but of consciousness itself. President Veltar looked around at her advisors, then back at the communication screen. Admiral Chun, by emergency authority of the Galactic Council, you are hereby granted full command authority over all galactic defense forces. May the ancestors forgive us for what we're about to become. And may they understand that we became it to survive, Chen replied. As the transmission ended, Kethvar found herself staring at displays showing the greatest crisis in galactic history. In 72 hours, the real war would begin. The question was whether a galaxy that had spent centuries divided by fear and prejudice could learn to work together quickly enough to matter. Looking at the human fleet around her, beings who had spent 3 centuries learning these lessons in the hardest possible way. She felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. It might not be enough. But for the first time since this crisis began, she believed they might actually have a chance. 6 months after the Calarian system fell, Admiral Kethvar stood in what had once been the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The great amphitheater had been transformed into a command center unlike anything in recorded history. Its classical architecture now threaded through with the organic curves and living lights of human biotechnology. Representatives from 47 species worked alongside beings from 17 different galaxies, their movements coordinated by quantum communication networks that made their thoughts almost as connected as their actions. She wore new armor now, biomechanical systems that interfaced directly with her nervous system, allowing her to coordinate with fleet movements across half the galaxy through pure thought. The modification process had been voluntary, but very few military personnel had chosen to remain unaugmented when they saw what the enhanced coordination could accomplish. The war had changed everyone. Admiral, called Dior, Okafor from across the command center, her form partially translucent as she existed simultaneously in physical and quantum states. We're receiving confirmation from the Perseus arm offensive. The Devourer conversion facilities have been neutralized. Kethvar nodded, accessing the tactical displays through her neural interface. The red indicators that had once covered nearly a quarter of the galaxy had been steadily shrinking over the past 3 months. Not without cost. The casualty reports represented losses on a scale that would have been incomprehensible before the war. But for the first time since the crisis began, they were winning. The transformation of galactic civilization had been as profound as the military campaign. Species that had maintained bitter rivalries for millennia now worked in seamless cooperation. Technologies that had been guarded secrets were freely shared. The old boundaries between us and them had dissolved in the face of an enemy that threatened all consciousness equally. Kethvar, came a familiar voice. She turned to see Marcus Chin approaching, but, like everyone involved in the war effort, he had changed dramatically. His human form was now partially integrated with the ship's consciousness, allowing him to coordinate operations across hundreds of star systems simultaneously. Somehow, despite the radical modifications, his essential humanity remained undimmed. Marcus, she greeted him, the informal address now natural after months of shared command. Status report: we've successfully evacuated the last civilian populations from the contested zones, he replied, his voice carrying harmonics from the quantum communication network. Oracle estimates we've saved 93% of the galaxy's original population. The figure was remarkable, but Kethvar knew what it represented. 7% of galactic civilization, nearly 1 billion sentient beings, had been lost to the Devourers before the unified defense could be established. Each loss was a tragedy that would echo through generations. And the main Devourer fleet? Marcus gestured toward the central holographic display, which showed the current tactical situation. The massive red formation that had once dominated the outer galaxy had been compressed into a single system at the galactic edge, surrounded but not yet defeated. They've consolidated all remaining forces at the Magellan Nexus, he said. Approximately 40,000 vessels, plus the converted matter from 7 planetary systems. Oracle estimates their total combat capability exceeds anything we've faced before. But we have them contained. For now. But, Marcus, interrupted Oracle's voice from throughout the chamber, the quantum resonance patterns suggest they're preparing for a final gambit. They're concentrating all their conversion capability into a single massive entity. Kethvar felt a chill of understanding. They're going to try to break out and overrun the core worlds before we can stop them. Worse, Marcus replied grimly. They're building something that could threaten neighboring galaxies. If they succeed in breaking free of this galaxy, they'll carry the resources of 40 billion years of evolution to their next target. The implications hung heavy in the command center. Around them, beings from dozens of species worked frantically to coordinate the final phase of a war that had already cost more than anyone could have imagined. What are our options? Kethvar asked. Marcus exchanged a look with Dr. Okafor that spoke of conversations already held and decisions already made. There's a way to stop them permanently, but it requires a sacrifice that goes beyond anything we've asked of anyone so far. What kind of sacrifice? Instead of answering directly, Marcus activated a new section of the holographic display. What appeared was a technical schematic for something that defied easy description, a fusion of human biotechnology, quantum consciousness principles, and the accumulated knowledge of 17 different galactic civilizations. We call it the Unity Protocol, Dr. Okafor explained. It's a weapon, but not in any traditional sense. It's designed to connect every conscious mind in the galaxy into a single, temporary collective consciousness. To what end? To create a psychic field strong enough to disrupt the Devourer collective permanently, Marcus said. Their strength comes from their ability to subsume individual consciousness into their hive mind. But if we can create a voluntary collective that's larger and more powerful than theirs, we can sever their connection to each other permanently, Kethvar finished, understanding dawning. Turn them back into individual entities that can't maintain their conversion processes. Exactly. But the process requires conscious consent from every participating being. And the quantum integration necessary means that everyone who participates will be permanently changed. We won't be the same species we were before. The magnitude of what they were proposing was staggering. It was nothing less than the conscious evolution of galactic civilization into something entirely new. How long do we have to decide? Kethvar asked. Oracle, Marcus queried. Sensor readings indicate the Devourer consolidation will be complete within 18 hours, the ancient AI replied. Once they achieve unified consciousness at their current scale, conventional military action will become ineffective. Around the command center, work had gradually stopped as beings of all species listened to the conversation. The decision they were facing would affect every conscious creature in the galaxy. President Veltar approached from across the chamber, her 4 eyes reflecting the weight of unprecedented responsibility. Admiral Chun, how certain are you that this protocol will work? 73% probability of success, Oracle answered before Marcus could speak. But the alternative, allowing the Devourers to escape this galaxy, has a near 0% chance of long-term survival for galactic civilization. And if we proceed with the Unity Protocol, what exactly will we become? Dr. Okafor stepped forward. Something new, President. A collective consciousness that maintains individual identity while sharing experiences and knowledge across species barriers. We'll still be ourselves, but we'll also be part of something larger, like the humans already are with their ships. Similar, but on a galactic scale, Marcus confirmed. The humans pioneered these techniques out of necessity, but extending them to every species in the galaxy is unprecedented. Resonance of lost stars materialized beside them. The crystalline beings formed shimmering with what Kethvar had learned to recognize as deep contemplation. In my galaxy, we faced a similar choice in our final moments. We chose to maintain our individual species' identities rather than risk transformation. Our civilization fell within weeks. And you regret that choice? Asked High Admiral Zexhan, who had become one of the most effective advocates for interspecies cooperation. Every moment of the 3 centuries since, Resonance replied. We preserved our independence and lost our existence. The humans offered us something we had never imagined, the chance to become more than what we were while remaining who we had always been. The debate that followed was unlike anything in galactic history, not because of its urgency, but because of its nature. 47 species were discussing the conscious evolution of their entire civilization, weighing the loss of individual species' identity against the survival of consciousness itself. I have a question, interrupted a new voice. Counselor Aranda, the ancient ethereal who had lived through humanity's original exile, moved slowly to the center of the group. Admiral Chun, if we proceed with this Unity Protocol, will it end the war permanently? Not just delay it, but end it forever. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Elder, I can't promise that. The universe is vast, and we don't know if there are other Devourer collectives beyond this one. But